Hello and welcome back to our next episode in our Golang crash course. My name is Chris Franklin. Today what we're going to do is we're going to start digging into custom types within Go. Another name for these is called structs. This is a way for us to put related data together in the same memory space within our application to make it much quicker to access all of the related things to a single representational object in space. Okay, so that all sounds really fancy and complicated, but you'll see it's actually pretty straightforward. So what I'm going to do just to demonstrate is I'm going to create a new type. So I'm going to use the type keyword inside of Go, and I'm going to create a point. All right, and we're going to think of this as a point on a graph. So we have an X and a Y location on a two-dimensional graph. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to declare this as a struct. So we're going to take our type, point, we're going to give it a struct, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do open curly braces, and then I'm going to declare my data fields that are part of this structure. Okay, so like with packages and modules that we talked about earlier, if you want things to be accessible outside of the scope, you need to make them capital. So in this case, I have a capital X. This is going to be my X location, and I'm going to declare it as an integer. And then I'm going to have my capital Y, and I'm going to declare it as an integer as well. And that's it. Now I have a new point structure, a point type that I can start using in my application. Okay, so let's see how we use this. So first I'm going to create a new point. To do that, I can use the shorthand of : equals, and I can assign into it the new point type. To declare this, I'm going to use curly braces to declare a new struct. I have to do curly brace, and then I have to give it the values that I want for X and Y. Now if I print this out, so I'm going to get rid of the hello world here, and I'm going to print out P. All right, there we go. P instead of brackets there. So we'll go ahead and save this, and then if I do go run and I print this out, what you'll see is that I now have a piece of data that represents 0, 1. That's my X and my Y. Now, I can change and reference the things that are inside of the structure and modify them throughout the rest of my application. So I can say p.x, and I can set it to 1. Now when I print this out, print line, I can print out P, and you'll be able to see that my object has changed. So I have 0, 1 before I change it, and then after I change it, I have 1, 1. Okay? So X is stored on the left, Y is stored on the right. Okay, so what else can I do here? Well, what I can do is I can say I want to create a pointer, so we're going to put this into P1. And I want, as we mentioned in our last episode, sometimes these structures can get quite large. If you put a lot of data in them, they can be quite unwieldy to pass around throughout the application. So what we'll want to do in that case is we'll want to pass it around as a pointer itself. Okay, so I'm going to do dereference the P, which is our point, and store it into P1. Now if I print this out, fmt.println, I want to do P1.x, okay? Exactly the same way. This dot notation here is exactly the same way I reference it as if it wasn't a pointer. So I can still access the data as if I'm reaching into there. And if I print this out, you'll be able to see that X is still 1. I'm referencing the exact same piece of data that I was referencing here, even though it's now stored as a pointer reference inside of my application. So this is a really convenient way for us to pass things around in a much smaller format, but still be able to access it directly as if we were passing the whole object around. Now, the last piece I want to cover about working with structs is default values. Okay, when I declare these objects, what I can do here is I can say we're going to do P2, 3, and 4 here, just so that we can have show some points here. So I'm going to do a new point, and I'm going to pass in only an X value. and I want x to be 12. Okay, but I'm not going to pass in a y value. And you'll see why in just a moment. What this is going to do is this is going to set y equal to the default value for the type that's stored in there. In this case, it's an integer, so the default value is going to be 0. So y is going to be 0 by default because I'm not passing it in. What I can also do is pass in absolutely nothing. I can create an empty point. And what this will do is this will set the whole thing to 0, 0. Okay? And finally, I can, by default, create, when I create the object, if I know I'm going to be passing it around as a pointer everywhere, instead of dereferencing it and storing it in another variable, what I can do is create a dereferenced point object with nothing inside of it. Okay? And this makes us start with a pointer. Okay? Oops. Pointer. Okay. So if I do a fmt.print line and I pass in all three of these, P2, P3, and P4, and I print this out, okay? What you'll see is now I have P2, P3, and P4. And when the special notation here is it will tell me that this is a pointer to the actual underlying struct. Okay, so it'll be ampersand 0, 0. That way we can see that it was declared as a pointer. Okay? And that's really it. That's all there is to working with structs. We can make these as complicated as we want. We can put structs inside of structs. We can have extremely complicated data objects that are represented by these things. And if you follow along through this tutorial series and end up moving into the advanced Go tutorial series, you'll get to see how we can use structs as the receivers of functions and turn those functions into what are called methods. So we can start to do more of an object-oriented approach to programming inside of Go by using a combination of structs and functions that work specifically on that struct. So we won't get into that in this crash course. That's a pretty advanced topic, but that's something to look forward to. And if you're interested in it, go look it up, and it's a really interesting topic. So thank you all so much. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.